All right, welcome to Beyond Betrayal. I'm still just getting a little set up here. All right, there it goes. Okay, the reason why we're doing this is because we had a 3-day intensive on the recovery, the 7 phases of recovery for beyond for betrayal. And we had some really great responses, and some people found it difficult to attend all 3 days. And sometimes it's hard to rewatch 3 videos, where there's questions and so what we decided was to just condense this into a 1 hour, maybe even quicker overview of those 7 phases. Um, we did post a little while ago a link where you can go through a quiz, like a little questionnaire, to see if you are stuck in one of those 7 phases. So we're going to be posting that as well later on if you want to take a look at that. And it's really just to understand when we're betrayed, when there's been those lies or infidelity, or you're just going through something like that. It's really hard to know how to get out. And sometimes you got to know which phase you're in because we all have to process and we all process differently. We talk a lot about temperaments, and that has so much to do with how we process. If you're a thinker, feeler, or doer, that can, really affect which phase you might be stuck in. So I do encourage you to check out or to go through that quiz just to see which phase you're in. They don't have to be in the order from 1 to 7, but you may be stuck in one of them. We all go through each one, but which one you're stuck in, um, that will depend. So we are going to right now go through the 7 phases of betrayal. All right. So whether you're here because you've been betrayed, lied to, or cheated on, know that many of us here have been where you are and you're not alone. This program is designed to offer you the support, understanding, and tools you need to navigate the aftermath of betrayal and begin the healing process. Over the next hour, we'll work through the 7 phases of infidelity recovery. Now, each phase is a step towards reclaiming your power, processing the pain, and finding a path forward, whether that leads to healing within your marriage or a new beginning, because we are not here to tell you what you must do, but rather get you to a place of clarity on how you want to move forward. Now, before we begin the journey of recovery, it's essential to recognize that there are different forms of betrayal. Betrayal isn't limited to physical infidelity. It can manifest in various ways: hidden secrets, inappropriate friendships, emotional affairs, lies, and even activities such as pornography use, masturbation, and other addictions. Each of these constitutes a breach of trust, and we want to acknowledge that what feels like betrayal can differ from person to person. So instead of us debating on the definition of betrayal over the next hour, we're going to focus on providing a space for individuals to process their unique experiences and begin the path toward healing and reconciliation. So phase one is your foundational phase. It's you just found out your spouse lied, betrayed, or cheated on you. So it's that initial shock. When working through betrayal, there are several reactions and responses. These vary based on one personality, character, and temperament. This is important to understand because these are the things that make you you and determine how each individual needs to move forward. So sometimes you'll see people that are really going through, like they're stuck at phase one. They are completely traumatized. And maybe it's been 5 weeks, maybe it's been 5 months, maybe it's been 5 years, and they're just stuck in that trauma. This could be, this could have to do with anything from their character, their personality, or their temperament. It could be based on characters, is your childhood, the trauma that maybe you experienced as a child. Personality is who we want to be seen as, or those special characteristics about ourselves. And then there's temperament, which is the root of how we process everything. So it is important to understand that everybody works through these things differently and at a different speed. The day you discover your spouse's betrayal is often referred to as D-Day. It's one that will forever be etched in your memory. It's a day when life as you knew it ceases to exist. Your world has just been turned upside down, and you probably have a million questions, but in this moment, you need to take a step back and focus on getting yourself into a safe space. Your emotions might be all over the place: shock, devastation, and rage, followed by confusion, uncertainty, and the feeling of utter defeat or humiliation. You'll be experiencing adrenaline surging through your body, putting you into fight, flight, or freeze mode, making you want to either run, scream, or hide. And before you take action, this is the time that you want to pause, breathe, and remove yourself from this immediate situation. Betrayal triggers a strong physiological and emotional response. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline spike, causing your heart to race, your breathing to become shallow, and your muscles to tense up. Your body is signaling to you that there is danger. Even your immune system might be affected, weakened by the lack of sleep or your spiked hormones, making you more susceptible to illness. You see, healing from betrayal encompasses more than just your feelings. It involves caring for your entire self, body, mind, and soul. That's why it's crucial to step away from the situation temporarily. If your spouse won't give you space, physically remove yourself from the situation and find yourself a safe space. They may not understand your internal turmoil and might focus on justifying their actions or making amends. But if you're experiencing this kind of trauma, prioritize taking time for yourself before addressing anything further. In fact, not doing this and rushing in or staying in a toxic situation can actually delay you processing phase one. When my marriage went through trauma, I stopped eating. And when I did eat, I actually just couldn't keep anything in me. In 1 week, I actually had lost about 13 pounds. And over the course of that month, I lost about 30 pounds. Trauma isn't just mental, it's emotional and physical as well. So that was my body saying danger. And I had to allow a time of processing. The emotional aspect is probably the most evident, especially if you're experiencing rage. Rage often accompanies betrayal, stemming from a deep sense of violated trust, and may become a way to regain a sense of control and protect yourself from overwhelming pain and vulnerability. This breach strikes at your core, challenging your identity, your self-worth, and the foundation of your relationship. Now, you have every right to express your anger and expose the betrayal, but in phase one, acting impulsively can actually have a lasting consequence, which is your right, but we also want to acknowledge it. We strongly advise allowing yourself time to process and respond thoughtfully. Reclaim control over your narrative and emotions, and choose actions that align with your true desired outcome, rather than succumbing to the immediate urge for vindication. Based on extensive conversations with couples in similar situations, avoid extreme actions like setting belongings on fire or posting accusations on social media. These reactions can be harmful not only to the future of your relationship, but to everybody involved. Instead, focus on finding safety and starting to process your emotions. If you share children together with the spouse or with the betrayer, this advice becomes even more crucial to consider, because your reaction can have a lasting effect on everybody. And this feels very unfair, but we do want to bring that to your attention. So phase one is all about creating a safe space. And if you're still in phase one and it's been a while, maybe this is what you need. Maybe you just need a time to step away and actually surround yourself in a safe space so that you can probably properly process those emotions. Phase two, your questions. This is acknowledging that everything has come to a halt in your life. So right now it's about understanding what it is, processing what your questions are. When you first learn that your partner has betrayed you, your mind is likely bombarded with questions, particularly the whys. You may wonder, why did they cheat on me? What's wrong with me? Why did they choose someone else? What did I do to deserve this? How could I have been so naive? How could they do this to our family? What should I do? All these other questions are going to be flooding your mind. These questions are a natural response as you try to make sense of the situation. You might be feeling like your entire relationship was a lie. While these questions need to be addressed in time, our first step is to accept that the betrayal has indeed happened. The world that you once knew and the relationship that you once had has been shattered. And these things will never be the same. This does not mean that your relationship is over, but it does mean that your future is going to be taking a new path. And I know how devastating this feels. And the pressure that you feel to decide what to do next is going to be probably overwhelming. Do I leave them? Do I look like an idiot if I stay? But right now, I just want to remind you that no decision needs to be made at this point. Remember, you've created a safe space for yourself, pulled away from the pressures of having to decide right now. You need to process the fact that this has happened. Do not stick your head in the sand. Don't pretend that this didn't happen. You actually need to almost grieve or mourn the loss of what was. So rather, we want to take time to organize what questions you need to prepare to get the answers you need to make those decisions. Open up your phone app, maybe your mobile notes app, or take out a piece of paper, and you're going to start writing down these questions. This will help you find a bit of guidance in this chaos. It will also get you clear on what you truly desire in the end. Our goal is to help to support and direct you during this traumatic time so that you can look back and be thankful for the steps that you took instead of looking back with regret. And if you've already jumped into pretending that this didn't happen, you're probably filled with regret because now you're there and maybe not much has changed and you just feel loss of control because you can't go back in time. So that's why we really want to go and address these things so that you can actually move forward. So if you're there and you've pushed this down, take out a piece of paper. What were the questions that you suppressed? Do you still have questions? Next, we encourage you to reach out to somebody completely neutral. This could be an anonymous support group, someone in our admin, a coach, or a trustworthy friend who won't judge you or your partner and who is in a stable relationship themselves. Why do I advise someone who's in a stable relationship? Because healthy relationships often reflect healthy individuals. If you seek guidance from someone such as an expert who has never been married and has completely different morals, ethics, or beliefs from you, you risk getting conflicting advice from than what might actually help you. So choose your safe person wisely. Many people would advise you to act on your feelings, assert your rights, and expose your spouse's lies. This is because they care about you and want you to fight for you and make you feel better. However, this might not be the path you truly want to take. And a healthy individual will always they'll validate that this is your right, but they'll recommend just wait a second. Let's work through this. Let's process this pain. Instead of reacting with anger, which is your right, let's figure out really what you want to do. And while you do have a right to these things, if you are uncertain about how you want to move forward, and there's a chance that you may consider working through this, you need to take a step back and breathe and rather contact someone who doesn't judge, is compassionate, and has wisdom in this area. The next step is to choose one or two of these questions that feel the most pressing. Write down your thoughts and feelings about these questions. To process phase 2, reflect on how you feel about the questions and uncertainties in your mind. How might taking time to process these questions help you make decisions that align with your true desire? And that means the true desired outcome for the future, which you might not know that yet. But if there's possibilities, what kind of questions do you need to actually understand what these possibilities are? Phase 3 is when you get into protective mode. The person that you trusted to love and support you is now the person who ripped your entire world apart and shattered your future. And if you have children, your protective instincts may kick in, making you want to shield your children from this new person and the pain that they have caused. Keep in mind that this can be a particularly challenging time for your children, and it's crucial to be mindful of how your emotions might impact them. It's not fair that you should bear the burden of someone else's selfish choices. But when children are involved, it's crucial to consider their long-term well-being and not just our own, which is really hard if you are in fight mode, because really what you really want to do is protect your children from this stranger that you've just encountered. Additionally, it's important to recognize that children often believe they are somehow at fault when there is lying or cheating involved, regardless of who is responsible. Even if you are the one who is hurting, try to shield the child from heightened emotions and toxicity. This might mean removing them from the environment temporarily or even removing yourself. Witnessing the consequences of lies, betrayal, or infidelity can harm children emotionally and psychologically. It's crucial to ensure that their environment remains as stable and supportive as possible during this time. Especially if you are experiencing hostility and outbursts, it might be wise to have a grandparent or other trusted adult care for them temporarily, giving you space to process your emotions away from their presence. While it's natural to feel anger towards your spouse, it's important to remember that anger is a powerful and often destructive emotion. Though you have every right to feel anger, allowing that anger to consume you can lead to unfortunate consequences for those that you care about. So today we want to focus on how to acknowledge and manage your pain, anger, frustration in a way that minimizes impact on your life and the lives of your children, because this will directly affect your relationship with your children. It's not to allow your spouse or partner to get away with what they did. It's this space of allowing yourself time to process without having to worry about the children. So we want to shield them, remove either them or yourself from the situation if you are in a toxic state, so that you can heal, that you can process, that you can regain your, emotions, because your emotions do affect your children. And it feels very unfair, but that is a reality. Let's work through the intense emotions that arise after betrayal, particularly anger, and focus on how to protect your children during this difficult time. What emotions are you currently feeling? How has your perception of your spouse changed? How do you talk about your spouse to your children, your child, or others? How do you think your emotions are affecting your children's others around you? These are questions that you really want to go through, because you want to make sure, if you are bad mouthing your spouse to your children, as much as your children will side with you, it's creating a very unstable environment for them. And that's not fair for either of you, because they will actually hold a degree of resentment towards you for allowing it to kind of affect their childhood. And if you are a child of divorce or, of trauma between your parents, you know what I'm talking about. You might really be upset at that one parent for doing whatever they did, but you hated seeing the fighting. You hated that they couldn't, maybe shield you from it or work through things better, or maybe not yell. So if you're in that situation, take that in consideration. If you're in this phase, I encourage you to take any steps necessary to protect your children from the effects of these emotions, or find a way today to manage them yourself. And what I should note there is this is actually for your benefit and for the future of your relationship with your own children as well. What are some healthy ways you can express or release your anger without affecting your children? And these would be journaling, talking to friends, physical activity, or therapy. I also want to recommend at this point, reduce your alcohol consumption so you can stay more in control of yourself, especially around your children and others, and put uplifting music or TV shows on, as opposed to depressing love songs or really, harsh shows, because all of this will affect your overall energy and demeanor. As you process phase 3, take a moment to reflect on how you've managed your emotions so far. How can you continue to protect your children and yourself and the future of your relationships as you move through this journey? Phase 4 is fearing the unknown. As the reality of the betrayal settles in, you may find yourself moving from anger into a deep sense of grief. You might ask yourself questions like, how will I ever get through this? Or did they ever really love me? The pain of realizing that your relationship will never be the same can be overwhelming. This overwhelming feeling or fear of moving into the unknown is why so many people go back to their lying spouse and try to go back to the way things were. That's why this step is so crucial. So many people are stuck right here. It's important to understand that mourning the loss of the relationship as you knew it is a necessary part of healing process. Often people try to move forward by suppressing their pain and doing everything that they can to return to how things used to be. They might even say, I just want things to go back to the way they were or how they used to be. But the truth is, things will never be the same. The relationship as you knew it is done. You need to mourn what it was and stop striving to go backwards so that you can build a future. Lots of people will blame appearances, and we just had a post about this yesterday. Some people convince themselves that changing their appearance will prevent further betrayals. Many women alter themselves after such experiences, believing that looking a certain way will somehow fix everything. How many women do I know that have gone on massive diets or gotten a boob job after their spouse's, infidelity or betrayal? Others might engage in more frequent intimacy, hoping that more sex will heal their brokenness. However, these approaches often make things worse because if they have been told that this betrayal happened because they weren't intimate enough, and now all of a sudden the job of the betrayed is to match the betrayer's level of intimacy demands, that is control. It is actually a form of abusive control. Um, and if that is you, you need to go back and literally you're gonna have to rip the Band-Aid off because the problem wasn't necessarily how you looked or that there wasn't enough intimacy. Maybe it contributed, but the root of problem was not there. And why? Justifying someone's selfishness by blaming your appearance and then changing yourself to stop them from hurting you is both victim blaming and a people-pleasing default. Neither of these address the root of the problem. Healing doesn't occur by pretending nothing happened or by making physical changes. Not addressing foundational issues is why betrayal might occur again. So then why do people lie, cheat, and betray? Why would someone risk everything for selfish gain? And what can be done to prevent it from happening again? We'll explore some of these in detail later, but for now, I want to give you hope. Because right now, when you're in that space of having to mourn, it's hard to believe that you can move forward. You're scared to rip the Band-Aid off. So although it feels like your world has fallen apart, this may be an indication that something was already broken. It might not be about you at all. It could be more about your spouse, but something in your relationship needs work, and it could just be them. Perhaps schedules became busy, family dynamics changed, financial stress increased, or other factors like addiction, mental health struggles, insecurities, childhood trauma, or religious misbeliefs came into play. There's something rooted, and it's beyond just how you look or not enough intimacy. This could be the start of something transformative. Not that you have to make your marriage work, but starting a new relationship, as daunting as it may seem, can also be beautiful. And I know that firsthand. When everything happened with our relationship, we went back to a foundational level. We talked about what happened to us as kids. We started talking through some of our traumatic events and started understanding each other's temperament so that we could better understand how to move through this. And this is another reason why we need to let go of what the relationship was for the possibility of building a new. So take a moment and reflect on your relationship. Acknowledge that there were likely underlying issues that needed real attention, and it needs to be addressed. Even if it was just one person's unresolved childhood trauma, it could just be your spouse. It really could be. And maybe, the relationship has been really great, but they are dealing with something. If you just say, like if you just sweep it under the carpet, then they can't even heal from whatever it is. And if they just blame you and take the blame, they can't heal from whatever it is. I'm not saying that this is your fault or that you caused your spouse to lie or that you should have seen it coming. When someone chooses to lie, they choose self over the marriage and teamwork. This is a selfish act. However, we all are 100% responsible for 50% of the relationship. If we're showing up 20% or 30% effort because life is busy or marriage isn't a priority, we need to be open to improving ourselves for our own sake, not to excuse their behavior, but to empower ourselves. Those who blame others never grow, they stay stuck. But those who are self-aware and open to improvement evolve into amazing individuals. Some of you will see the power in self-awareness, and some will resist it and hold on to blaming your spouse. I want to make this very clear. The betrayer or liar is not off the hook. There is no excuse. They chose self. They decided to hurt you. You may have every right to blame them. And there was most likely something off inside of them or in the relationship prior to the situation that needed addressing. Are you willing to look at that area and your contribution to it? Take time to grieve your old relationship and who you were. Open your mind to self-growth and write down all the areas you loved, everything that you loved about your relationship. Then write down all the areas where the relationship needed improvement. Then all the areas where you could use growth yourself. So this takes us to phase 5. As you navigate this painful phase of reflection, ask yourself if you are, number 1, okay with blaming your spouse and moving on, or number 2, willing to walk through this pain and grow as an individual, not necessarily committing to stay, but also not ready to walk away. Deciding between 1 and 2. If you've chosen to blame your spouse and move on, I understand. Being betrayed is gut-wrenching, and you have every right to walk away. However, the remaining steps are geared towards those who want to emerge from this stronger and more empowered. Feel free to follow along, but keep in mind that the purpose of the following steps may not align with your decision if you're deciding, number 1. If you've chosen 2 and wish to navigate this pain and grow, let's work through some questions before we move to phase 5. How do you feel about the realization that your relationship as you knew it is over, is gone? What are you grieving the most about the old relationship? Have you found yourself wanting to fix things by changing your appearance or behavior? If so, what are these things? And do you really think they're the reason for the betrayal? The underlying issues, what underlying issues do you think may have contributed to the betrayal? How can acknowledging these issues help you in your healing process? Are you ready to walk away, or do you want to explore rebuilding your relationship? And what are your reasons for making this decision? Those are all really important questions. Now, if you go back to the 3-day version of this, we walk through these and you can, we have a workbook, or just DM me and I can send you a workbook to go through these questionnaires. As you process phase 4, take a moment to reflect on your journey so far. How has mourning the loss of your old relationship helped you gain clarity? What steps will you take moving forward? I cannot stress the importance of mourning the loss, because as long as you are wanting to go back in time and make things how they used to be, you can't build a new relationship. You keep wanting to put your spouse into this little box that you saw them in, instead of seeing them rather as an evolved person, or as a broken person, or as a complex person. You keep wanting to go back into the person that you used to be, whoever that was, instead of realizing I am now a different person. I have just gone through a traumatic event and I have the ability to grow from this and become a new version of myself. So we have to go through the mourning. Phase 5, stuck in victim. When someone has torn your heart apart, the last thing you want to do is reflect on your own actions. It feels almost like a betrayal of yourself, like you're validating what they did by even considering your own role in the relationship. You might wonder, why should I look at myself? Isn't that a form of gaslighting? The truth is, self-reflection during this time isn't gaslighting or taking the blame or excusing your partner's behavior. It's about empowering yourself to grow and ensuring that no matter what happens, you come out of this stronger and more self-aware. When someone cheats or lies, they often feel the need to justify their actions or avoid being the villain. If we bombard them with blame or shame and threats, they're more likely to dig their heels in and validate their actions further rather than owning up to their mistakes. This is because genuine apologies and remorse can only come from a place of humility, and that can't happen if your spouse feels cornered or attacked because they immediately will go into their own fight or flight mode. It's easy to fall into the trap of labeling your partner as crazy or narcissistic or a psychopath in order to absolve yourself of any responsibility. But this approach robs you of future growth and keeps you stuck in a victim mentality. The truth is, as soon as we place one of these labels on someone, we're washing our hands of any contribution that we may have inadvertently had. We're saying, I had nothing to do with this, and they are 100% at fault, which they might be. I'm not saying they're not, but when we say it, we're absolving ourselves and we're actually stopping any kind of future growth. But someone with true confidence, if you have confidence, or if you are trying to gain confidence or empowerment and wholeness, when someone with true confidence and wholeness has the ability to look at a painful situation and reflect on themselves, not because they want to be a martyr or let the other person off the hook, but because empathy is trying to understand how the other person, trying to understand the other person is feeling. Why is it that they did what they did? If you just write them off as a narcissist, you never get your why. You never understand them, and they will never be humble enough to reveal it to you. So that means no growth, no future. By calling someone a narcissist or psycho, you're saying they did what they did because they have a personality disorder that can't be changed. They are broken, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. And maybe that's true to what you're, and maybe there's truth to what you're saying. But when we're talking about empowerment, that's you. True character is built in the moments when we choose to reflect on our own actions and decisions, even in the face of immense pain. This requires humility and vulnerability, which can feel incredibly scary because it exposes our deepest fears and insecurities. But through this process, we can embrace the truth of who we are and find the strength to grow. That is empowerment. In the book, Increasing Your Capacity, author's name, it's actually, why can't I remember his name right now? Shoot, that's probably why it's not there. Um, the author encourages us to view the trials in our lives as opportunities for growth. How we navigate these challenges determine our path in life. We can either increase our capacity or fall victim to our circumstances. This concept of growth through adversity isn't always an easy concept or isn't easy to accept, especially when it's more comfortable to remain in a space where we are the victim. But if we want to grow, we must push through the discomfort and believe in this process. What is his name? No. As we move forward, be open to seeing if there is room for you to improve. Have your actions, beliefs, attitude, schedule, or words ever hurt the relationship? How would you like your children? Oh, this is a really good one. How would you like your children or your closest friends to describe you? Is that the version of you that shows up in your relationship? What qualities do you want to embody even in the face of betrayal? Going through this, how do you want your children to remember you handled it? Identifying these traits will guide you through the next phases of this journey. In phase 6, we are going to prepare for the talk. This phase is about starting a conversation that will help you find answers, even if you're unsure about what you want from your spouse or your relationship. The objective is not to resolve anything in one sitting, but to open the door to understanding and to start navigating a path forward. We are aware that many people fear this conversation, and here are some of the reasons why. Fear of conflict. You might worry that the conversation will escalate into a heated argument or lead to further hurtful words or even information. This is also directly correlates with the temperament that is called multifaceted, or Socrates calls them phlegmatics. So fear of conflict is their number one reason as to why they don't um, talk to their spouses. Emotional vulnerability. Opening up your feelings can make you feel exposed and vulnerable, especially after you've already been hurt or if you're unsure of how your spouse will respond. Emotional vulnerability is directly correlates with a high doer, somebody that wants to get through the situation, you know, get to the results, push it under the carpet. They just want to pretend it never happened because emotional vulnerability is one of their greatest fears. Uncertainty of outcome. The fear of not knowing how the conversation will end or whether it will lead to any resolution or change can be paralyzing. And this one correlates with a high thinker. The thinker wants to know the end result. They want to create the entire system. They will think of every possible outcome, but they fear which one it will be. Potential for rejection. There's a fear that expressing your pain and asking for answers might lead to further rejection or dismissal of your feelings or even your relationship. Who isn't afraid of that, right? If you confront your spouse and they say, yeah, and I don't love you anymore, it's done, right? Just that rejection. Who isn't afraid of that? But you don't get to start new or move forward without this conversation. Now, when my husband and I had our talk, I was shaking. If you've ever heard my story, you'll know that actually my legs stopped working and I had to crawl to a chair so I wouldn't be literally stuck on the ground. When I look back, I realized that I was scared of all of our skeletons being exposed. I was scared of what else I'd find out. I was scared that he wouldn't agree to talk and that he would just walk away. And I was especially scared to talk about it because when you talk about it, it's out there and it can't be swept back under the carpet. And I had no idea what the outcome would be, and I didn't know what I would lose. The talk makes everything just seem so real and it brings everything to the surface. And that's why it's just really scary. It's kind of like the unknown, the fear of the unknown. But this talk needs to happen for both of you to move forward. Firstly, this conversation allows you to express feelings and release some of the emotional burden that you've been carrying, which is essential for processing your pain so that you can begin to heal. Now, hopefully, it also provides clarity and understanding about what happened, helping you make sense of the situation, which could also help you decide the best path forward, whether that's working through the issues or deciding to part ways. Additionally, it's important for your spouse to acknowledge their actions and take responsibility for their behavior. This conversation helps establish whether they are willing to be accountable and work on rebuilding trust. If your spouse is unwilling to do this, it's a sign that they are not remorseful. If you want a relationship built on trust, this will not happen with an entitled, selfish spouse. And it's scary to have that conversation when you feel already that they are that person, because that means you have to do something afterwards, right? It also provides a chance to set clear boundaries and expectations moving forward, communicating what is acceptable and what is not. Effective communication is a cornerstone of rebuilding trust, and this decision can set the stage for transparency and sincerity in your interactions. If you haven't checked out Speak Love, this is our communication course. Literally, it walks you through exactly how to have these conversations so that your spouse will listen and respond. Do you have a conversation like that? Do you have conversations like that with your spouse? Can you actually have a sitting conversation where you're interacting with each other, where you're looking into each other's eyes and actually coming to resolutions? If not, you need to check out Speak Love. Moreover, this talk aids in decision making by helping both partners assess the state of the relationship and make informed decisions about the future. It's an opportunity for personal and relational growth, encouraging both partners to confront difficult emotions and address underlying issues. Finally, addressing the betrayal directly prevents it from festering and causing more harm, allowing you to take control of your emotional well-being and start the journey toward recovery. So how do we get ready for this talk? And if you haven't had a sit-down talk with that piece of paper, it's time. First, choose a safe space. Have the conversation in a location where you feel safe, be it at home, in a park, or public coffee shop. This is your decision. Where do you feel safe? Remove any distractions. Turn off phones, get a babysitter, close window blinds. You both need to give each other your undivided attention. To be honest with you, our conversation took place over the span of about 24 hours inside of our bedroom. In the middle of it, we had to pick up this happened in the morning after our kids were at school. So we actually, at about 3 o'clock, we called the in-laws. We had them pick up the kids and take the kids to their house. And we spent literally 24 hours in our bedroom and in our closet. If I want to be really honest with you, when I would have my breakdown, because I was dealing with a lot of depression at the time, I would sit in my closet. I would go and sit. Now I'm getting emotional thinking about it because that's like really real to me. I would go and I'd sit in my closet, and that's where I would have my going down the rabbit holes, as I would refer to it. When I was depressed, I would sit in my closet. And so in the middle of these talks, I would have to migrate to the closet because that was ultimately my safe space. In the confines of this space is where I felt safe. And so at times, my husband would sit on the floor in the closet with me. And then when I would feel okay, we'd go back into the bedroom. And then if I felt overwhelmed again, we'd go back into the closet. So we got a babysitter and we stayed in our room. Agree on a pause word. If the conversation becomes too heated or overwhelmed, use this word to take a 10-minute timeout. If you're having the conversation impulsively and you haven't established a pause word, decide right now what you are going to say. It could be as simple as, I need 5 minutes. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I just need to cry, or I just need to scream, or I just need to have a moment. I need us to keep talking, but I need 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it is so that you can regain yourself. Take turns talking, listening with the intent to understand, and agree to avoid raising voices or using negative physical touch. Again, if this is impulsive, you will have to lead this. You will need to keep your voice and demeanor calm. The only way to get them to open up is to keep the space safe for them as well. Stay on topic. Focus on the issue at hand and avoid dredging up the past mistakes. If parenting or other unrelated issues arise, agree to address them at another time. And this is really hard when you are kind of ripping that Band-Aid open and having a talk. You want to bring up everything. You want to talk about when you said this, and this is how it made me feel, and 5 years ago when you did this, and maybe those are all things that you need to address. But right now, stay with the questions that you've written down. Keep it really linear or really, really hyper-focused. Get through these and then agree to have another conversation. An hour later, the next day, plan this out because you want to process. And if you bring this if you're doing this because you want to figure out how to move forward, then your spouse will want to be on board because they'll want to move forward as well. But if you're doing this to lash out and blame and shame, the conversation will come to an end. So stay on topic. Have your list of questions prepared. Write down what you want to ask ahead of time, and this will help keep the conversation focused. Stay true to your core values. Remember the 3 words or how you want to be defined by your children or your friends. That was an important question because you want to remember How is it that you want to be defined? How do you really want to get through the situation? Choose 3 words that you can keep going towards or keep leaning into to get you through these conversations. They will guide your actions and responses during the talk. You do not have any pressure right now to decide. Alleviate the pressure from yourself. You don't have to make any final decisions during this conversation. Take your time and ensure that your partner respects your need for space and time to process. Keep the conversation productive. In order to get the answers you're looking for, it's important to keep the safe space for both parties to share their thoughts, even if you don't agree with them. There is no justification for cheaters or for cheating or infidelity, but hearing how they justify it can help you see their motive better. Right or wrong, it's a story that they tell themselves, and it's worth finding out. This doesn't mean you take the blame. It's just realizing where their mind was. The definition of empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others. This will be your greatest asset during this conversation. Approaching the talk with empathy can help you gain a deeper understanding of your partner's perspective and motivations, even if you don't agree with their or condone their actions. That is really powerful. Don't become empathetic because you're justifying them. You're becoming empathetic so that you can understand the story that they're telling themselves, the justifications that they have told themselves, their why. So here are 2 possible scenarios. Reacting from your emotion. You enter the conversation angry, aggressive, and consumed by pain. This might lead to a venting session rather than a productive conversation. If you need to release your emotions first, be clear about that and agree to meet again when you're in a better headspace for discussion. This is your right. And I know many who have taken this path of reacting with their emotion, and it didn't help them in any way to move forward. Your second scenario is responding purposefully. You create a safe space, controlled environment where both of you can express your feelings and thoughts without judgment. Allow one another to talk and resist the urge to confront or yell. This approach is more likely to get the answers that you need and help you make informed decisions moving forward. It's all about getting your questions answered, not about getting back together or deciding your future. You need clarity first. No explanation, no justification, no apology will seem adequate. So don't wait for a magical reason that will make all, the infidelity or the betrayal make sense. In fact, you may never get the answers that you want. However, this is the best course of action to take to open the door to a conversation that could get you your answers. Now that you've created a safe space and you have your boundaries in place, have your questions ready and make a deal with yourself to better understand their answers. Phase 7, forgiveness. That is a scary word. Forgiving someone who's hurt you deeply is no easy task. It feels like you're letting them off the hook or pretending that their actions didn't matter. The pain and betrayal can make the idea of forgiveness seem impossible. And it's natural to be filled with anger and sadness. It's hard to imagine moving past it, especially when every part of you wants to hold on to the hurt. But holding on to forgiveness can create a false sense of security, where you feel like you're protecting yourself by holding tight to anger and resentment. It might seem like a shield against further hurt, giving you the illusion that by refusing to forgive, you're somehow maintaining control or even punishing the person who wronged you. This mindset often comes from a place of fear. You might worry that forgiving will make you vulnerable or that it means letting them off the hook for their actions. People often resist forgiveness because it feels like letting go of their right to be hurt, or they fear it might mean condoning the wrong that was done. The process of forgiving can feel like a betrayal, so to one's own pain and anger, which are seen as valid and justified. This struggle is real. It's hard to let go of those feelings because they've become part of your defense mechanism. However, clinging to unforgiveness can trap you in a cycle of pain and prevent you from moving forward, leaving you stuck in the past and blocking your path to healing and personal growth. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying what they did was okay. It's about freeing yourself from the constant grip of hurt. It's a way to let go of the negative feelings and start fresh, giving yourself the chance to heal and move forward with your life. It's all about reclaiming your peace and happiness, and that's something worth working towards. To be honest, when you hold on to resentment and shame, your spouse, when you hold, yeah, shame, your spouse is more likely to hurt you again because they are stuck inside of a painful space with nowhere to turn. So I didn't say that really well, but basically shaming them and holding resentment over them keeps them stuck, which actually in turn could be contributing to that foundational problem in the first place. They may have done this to themselves, but if they are remorseful and doing the work to rebuild trust, and we refuse to let these things go, they will eventually look for freedom in one way or another. Personally, I don't believe anyone should live under condemnation. It doesn't inspire someone to change. It just pushes them further away. Let's discuss 3 different perspectives of the effects of unforgiveness. And we're going to go scientifical, philosophical, and spiritual. The scientific perspective. From a scientific viewpoint, holding on to unforgiveness can trigger stress response in the body, affecting both your physical and mental health. Studies like those conducted by show that unforgiveness is associated with higher levels of cortisol, a stress hormone that can lead to various health problems, including increased body fat, high blood pressure, and mood swings. Additionally, chronic stress linked to unforgiveness can weaken the immune system, as evidenced by research from, this was research in 2000. Now, there has been much more research since, but these were really good in streamlining the effects, and it's basically just heightened in more recent studies. This prolonged stress can lead to symptoms of anxiety and depression, further impacting your overall well-being. Moreover, studies like the one in 2007 suggest that holding on to resentment can disrupt the brain's reward system, trapping individuals in a cycle of negative emotions and impaired cognitive functions. This can create a self-perpetuating loop of stress and bitterness, ultimately harming your mental and physical health. So what this is saying is unforgiveness. Science says that for unforgiveness can have lasting effects on your own health and well-being. The philosophical perspective. Philosophically, forgiveness is often seen as a virtue that promotes inner peace and personal growth. Many philosophical traditions emphasize that forgiveness is crucial for emotional liberation. Holding on to grudges and resentment can weigh heavily on your soul, trapping you in bitterness and preventing you from experiencing true freedom and happiness. In relationships, resentment and blame can act as barriers to connection, unity, and intimacy. Even if you're not ready to reconcile with your spouse, it's important to recognize that harboring resentment creates walls in the relationship, limiting growth, trust, and communication. This can contribute to a toxic and stagnant environment, which is not conducive to healing and moving forward. As it's been said, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. How much poison are you willing to drink? Gandhi said, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong." Gandhi's perspective highlights the idea that true strength lies in the ability to forgive. He believed that holding onto grudges and resentment signifies weakness, as it's often easier to cling to anger than to let go and move forward. Forgiveness, in this view, is a sign of inner strength and resilience, showing that you have the capacity to rise above hurt and pain and to choose peace and understanding over bitterness. The spiritual perspective. Forgiveness is a foundational principle in many spiritual beliefs, including Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. In Christianity, forgiveness is central to the teachings of Jesus Christ, who exemplified forgiveness even in the face of betrayal and persecution. The concept of God's grace is heightened through teachings that emphasize how forgiveness leads to personal transformation and spiritual renewal. By choosing to forgive, individuals not only experience personal healing and growth, but also open themselves up to receive the abundance, grace, and blessings of God. Forgiveness is often viewed as an act of obedience to God's will, and a reflection of one's faith and spiritual maturity. Choosing forgiveness is about regaining your power and aligning yourself with principles of love and righteousness. Now imagine a water faucet that represents that flow of love, God's love and grace and favor. The decision to make whether to forgive or hold on to resentment controls the tap. Choosing resentment decreases the flow, while choosing forgiveness increases the flow. This analogy illustrates how forgiveness directly impacts the blessings you receive in your life. God's love is always abundant, but our choice can either open us up to that abundance or limit it. It can be difficult to accept that our own actions influence the flow of blessings in our life. You may feel it's unfair that withholding forgiveness can slow down the blessings meant for you. But remember, if you resonate with the spiritual perspective, God's grace is always available, and forgiveness, shame, resentment, and judgment are what block it. When we choose not to forgive, we personally decrease the flow of grace in our lives. And whether it be scientific, science, philosophical, or spiritual, this is the consensus. Manifestation, abundance, even science-backed, health. This is all reliant on our ability to forgive. Yes, you have the right to choose not to forgive, but be aware that unforgiveness will hold you back from the growth of freedom, true joy, and righteousness. Remember, forgiveness is not synonymous with trust or reconciliation. Remember that. Forgiving someone does not automatically rebuild trust or mean you must reconcile. Rebuilding trust is a process that must be earned, and no one should pressure you into reconciling without genuine remorse and accountability from the other party. One of the questions that was sent in was, how can I forgive someone who hasn't apologized or shown any remorse? Forgiving someone who hasn't acknowledged their wrongdoing can feel particularly challenging. The key is to understanding that forgiveness is more about your own peace of mind than about the other person's actions. It's about letting go of the burden of the anger and pain, even if the person hasn't made amends. That doesn't mean that you stay with them. If somebody is not acknowledging their wrongdoing or validating what they've done, there needs to be action taken on your behalf. And we can, that's in Speak Love, or you can talk to a coach about that. But if they're unremorseful, there is really very little future, or at least a solid, healthy future for your relationship. How do I forgive someone when I still feel hurt and angry? Forgiveness is a process, not an immediate switch. It's normal to still feel hurt and angry even as you work towards forgiveness, allowing yourself to feel those emotions while gradually working through them. Forgiveness often involves recognizing your feelings and making a conscious decision to let go of retaliation or retribution. Really, the first step is deciding that you will forgive and then work slowly from there. Forgiveness doesn't happen just with a snap of the fingers. It's a decision. It's constantly re-choosing to forgive. It's constantly re-choosing to not resent or throw something back in someone's face or to shame them. It's a constant decision. That's why we call it living in forgiveness, or it's referred to as constantly waking up in the morning. When I wake up in the morning, my husband and I have to choose to forgive one another. What if I've forgiven them in the past and they do it again? Yeah. Forgiving someone once doesn't automatically mean they won't hurt you again. And it's natural to feel conflicted if the same hurtful behavior occurs. It's important to understand that forgiveness is a process that benefits your own emotional well-being, but it doesn't necessarily change the other person's behavior. That is why it's so important to get to the root of why they did what they did. Where is it coming from? And again, they don't get there unless there's that safe space. When there's a safe space, when they really feel if they're resistant against therapy or coaching, it's usually because they feel like it's just going to be a vent session and they don't want to sit there for an hour and just be blamed. But when you create a safe space with your partner, and the willingness, and the purpose is to create a future or to figure things out, then they become more willing because they want to know that they will be heard and understood. And ultimately, they want to know what's wrong with them too. When someone repeats their mistakes, it's crucial to reevaluate the situation. Forgiveness can still be part of your healing journey, but it might also be time to set firmer boundaries or reassess the relationship. You can forgive for your own peace of mind, but you also need to protect yourself from repeated harm. Consider seeking support from a counselor or coach to navigate these complex emotions and decide the best path forward for your own well-being. So to sum up today, I want more than anything for you to feel hopeful in your ability to move forward by working through these phases. I'm not sure which one you're in or if you're stuck or if you've been stuck for a while, but I do know that if you stay in the fire because you're scared or believe that that is where you feel comfort, you can't grow. However, if you desire to move forward, this is the best way to start. Again, we have that little link to see kind of which phase you're in and then rewatch this. I want to mention that we do have a program called Speak Love, which you can find throughout this or in the resources in the emails that we send out. And it walks you through having powerful conversations and the steps to rebuild trust, connection, and even the steps to falling back in love. For those 21 days, which it's a 21-day program so that you can do it in expressive version every single morning, you wake up and you walk through one step. You're challenged to work through a step for 21 days with or without your spouse. This is to help build a habit of daily connection. At the end of 21 days, we provide you with an extra resource and 30-day plan of action so that you can continue your journey. If your spouse is not on board and does not want to do Speak Love with you, that's okay, because Speak Love is also about you creating that safe space where they start to talk, where they start to walk through it. And when they're open to it, bring them on board or show them one thing in those 21 days that they might be interested in. And then whenever the relationship is kind of going through something, bring out Speak Love. Go through whichever phase it is that you are in and go through it again. These exercises are micro exercises or micro conversations to just create a small connection to rebuild the foundation of your relationship. And the entire thing is built systematically from the foundation and these building blocks that will just help you grow closer together. So I just want to, I'll check out here to see if anybody has any questions at all. I'm going to see here. But you can always send your questions in to us. We'd love to hear anything. If you have any questions or concerns, if you're going through one of these, if you do the quiz and you are in phase 2 or 4, what to do, reach out to us. There are so many great experts in this group. We have, you can either reach out to one of the admins and we can point you in the right direction, or reach out to one of us and we can help. But it's time for life to change. 2025 is coming. And we want to start it off with a great year. So let's take the steps moving forward.